I think we're all back. So we had three conversation inquiries on the table. The first being, what is the thesis of the reading? The second being, what do these wisdom teachings say about the societies that produce them? And then finally, what was your favorite passage or wisdom teaching? Who would like to share what was discussed in their breakout room?
I'll share.
Okay.
So we discussed the second entry and for the reading, it made me think of like power in the workplace and how different it is like nowadays. Not only because like back then there were like rulers and kings, but because of how overall like it was a different environment with like so many different values like wisdom, respect, and all of that.
Thank you, Destiny. So what Destiny provided for us was her analysis, right? So she said she read this, and what helped her make sense of what she was reading was thinking about how power manifests itself in the workplace and how far we have came from the values that were talked about within the reading to our contemporary situation, how power is, again, manifested in spaces like work. Thank you. Who else would like to share what's discussed in that group?
I'll share.
Okay.
So we discussed that the thesis was kind of a way of like of us trying to obtain certain knowledge, right? And this knowledge can be obtained one of two ways, either through the passing of those who have come before us and our own experiences. And the reading did talk a lot about like the mayor who wanted to pass down his teachings and stuff like that. And so I perceive that as a way of teaching for future generations the ways of the past, because many of that has been lost, like as of reading, like for example, like the readings of the past of these like past generations have been either like destroyed or are not like like visited at the time period that we are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was really important.
Thank you, Garrison. Yeah, you make some really good points, right? Like, kind of also echoing Destiny's point in the sense of being attentive to the fact, like, how far we've came as a society um, in our attempts to ignore ancient or indigenous knowledge or and spiritual knowledge. So that's a very good call out. Let's get one more before we move on. Somebody tell me what their favorite passage or wisdom teaching was.
I thought that number 17 was really important. Pull it up. If you're a person who judges, listen carefully to the speech of one who pleads. Don't stop the person from telling you everything that they had planned to tell you. A person in distress wants to pour out his or her heart even more than they want their case to be won. If you're one who stops a person who is pleading, that person will say, "Why does he reject my plea?" Of course, not all that one pleads for. Of course, not all that one pleads for can be granted, but a good hearing soothes the heart. The means for getting a true and clear explanation is to listen with kindness. I think it was like one of many that talks about listening to other people instead of like not always just listening to react in a certain way, but listening to a process and just be of support to someone. I just really liked that one specifically because you're able to. I think it goes back into like I think it goes to like question 3 or no question 2 and how like that society at that time was very keen on supporting other people and being of service in some type of way.
Really good call out, Zuri. I like how you articulated, right? Listening to listen, not for a response, but just like to actively listen to hear what's going on. And also the fact that, right, he's telling you if you're a person who judges, this is how you should go about your process of judging. Hear these individuals out to their fullest capacity, and then it allows you to make a well informed decision. And if you think about how our court system plays out nowadays, right, Not often are the judge listening to those who are pleading their cases. Oftentimes, the judge already has their minds made up before the trial even goes into trial, right? So, very good call out. Thank you all. What we'll do from here is transition into my notes for the reading. Hopefully, this will kind of clarify any questions or confusions that you all may have, provide a little bit more context to the reading. And then from there, we'll jump into our fishbowl, and that fishbowl will lead into our broader conversation as a course. So, the book that we pulled this from is called The Teachings of Ptahhotep, the oldest book in the world, right? And it is quite literally the oldest book in the world, the oldest book of wisdom teachings documented. So I'm going to kind of read from the introduction some little elements that will allow you guys to make a little bit more sense of what we're dealing with. Again, you didn't have access to this, so don't feel like you misread or missed out. I'm going to provide this for you. So one, Ptahhotep was 110 years old when he produced this writing, okay? So 110 years when he decided to make this, this wisdom text. It says that the Meter Neter, right? And that's spelled Mdwnettcher, the Meter Neter, is Africa's and the world's oldest recorded writing system, okay? It's the oldest recorded writing system in the world. What's important about the Meter Neter is that there is no evidence of a developmental period. This writing system simply appears fully developed as it must have existed ages before either Kemet or Tasseti came into being. This existence of this writing alone is a testimonial to the development of early Nile civilizations in the ancient Hapti and Nile Valley. Okay, so again, the earliest known documented writing system, right, in the world and in Africa. And again, when this writing system is uncovered, it's uncovered in full development, right? So there's not any stages of it coming into being. It comes fully developed. Okay. So also think about this when you hear the history of Africa, right? Often scholars will say that Africa has no written history. It's an oral tradition history, right? So this directly counters the claim of Africa having no written history, right? In fact, this argues that Africa has the first world written history. It says, the earliest Meter Neter writings described offerings list to the deities or its manifestations in power. Later, prayers of offerings were substituted for the offerings list. These writings, as with most all writings in ancient Kemet, emerged out of a profound religious orientation towards the world. This religious orientation found its expression in preparation for life after death or for the resurrection. However, lost to many analysis is the fact that in preparation for life after death or for the resurrection, the subsequent was actually articulating a set of values as codes of behaviors by which to live one's life in the world before death. No higher human behavioral code has been found anywhere in human history than in the earliest code of the ancient Kemetics. Okay, so let's think about what we just read or what you just heard. Let me ask you a question. I hope make sense of this a little bit more. Somebody tell me if you know. One, the Bible is the term the Bible, right? It's an acronym. And if you know what that acronym stands for, somebody let the class know. What is the letters in the Bible an acronym for? So I'm going to assume no one knows, right? So Bible, B-I-B-L-E. Basic instructions before leaving Earth. Bible. Basic instructions before leaving Earth, okay? So this is what the work that the Bible is meant to do, right? Give you a code, a moral compass, a set of rules and regulations that will instruct you on how to live here so that way you could successfully navigate your way to the afterlife. All right? But listen to what they say about the teachings again. I'm going to read that passage one more time. This religious orientation found its expression in preparation for life after death or for the resurrection. However, lost to many analysts is the fact that in preparation for life after death or for the resurrection, the supplicant was actually articulating a set of values and a code of behaviors by which to live one's life in the world before death, right? So the Bible is teaching you how to live so you can make it to the afterlife. That's what the Bible is concerned with, right? That's why they're giving you basic instructions before leaving earth, where this text is concerned with how your life is here, right? It's concerned with instructing you how to live and how to create a harmonious scenario so that way you could have heaven on earth and not wait for these things in the afterlife. So this is the distinction in the work that this book is trying to do and the work that the Bible seeks to do, okay? So this is talking about the how old this text is, okay? So it can be traced to the 5th dynasty under the rule of King Asa is when they assume that that Ptahhotep produced this writing. And then they argue that even if it were in the Middle Kingdom material, at an age of the 12th dynasty of approximately 2000 BC, it would still be given the oldest wisdom literature in the world. Given a 5th dynastic age, we can say that the instructions of Ptahhotep belong to a period approximately 2,500 years before Christ, right? So we know at least this text appears 2,500 years prior to Christ, okay? So we know that this text predates the Bible, all right? So that's in the introduction. And then I believe it was you, Zuri, who was saying how this idea of hearing becomes important as he talks about those who judge. And I was really glad that you picked up on this because not only is hearing and listening foundational for that passage, but it becomes foundational for the whole reading, right? And I'm going to read a passage from page 16, from like the opening page. And I want you to be attentive to the terms that echo the action of hearing, listening, and then the action of speaking and uttering words, okay? May your servant, now this is Ptahhotep speaking to King Asa, who is the pharaoh at this time, okay? May your servant be authorized to use the status that old age affords to teach the hearers so as to tell them the words of those who have listened to the ways of our ancestors and of those who have listened to the gods. May I do this for you so that strife may be banned from among our people and so that the two shores may serve you, right? So at least what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times within that passage, they echo the sentiment of listening or speaking, right? So speaking and listening again becomes foundational to understanding what Ptahhotep is up to in this text. Now, let me ask you all, what does it mean? What does strife mean? What does strife mean? What does it mean to have strife?
Anger.
Anger is an element of strife, absolutely. What else? How else?
Sorry.
Right.
Conflict, having conflict
Yeah.
with others. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Thank you, Leslie. Right. So conflict, beef, right? This is this idea of strife. Now listen again to what he's saying. And I'm going to kind of crystallize it as we read through it. May your servant be authorized or allowed to use the status of 110 years, right? That old age of 4. So I'm 110 years old. So let me use my 110 years of experience, my 110 years of wisdom, right? Let me do this so I can to teach the hearers. So let me teach those who are willing to listen, right? So to tell them the words of those who have listened to the ways of our ancestors, right? So what he wants to seek to do is to tell the masses who are willing to listen the ways of our ancestors. Because in his 110 years on earth, he has listened to those who have followed the ways of the ancestors, and he has listened to their words. And he wants to pass their words down to the people in the society who's willing to listen, right? And of those who have listened to the gods, right? So not only am I carrying the words of the ways of our ancestors, but I'm also carrying the words of those who listen to the gods, right? So I'm providing a direct line of communication from the gods to the ancestors to the people, okay? May I do this for you, King Pharaoh Asa, so that strife, beef, conflict, anger, right, be banned from among our people, and so that the two shores may serve you. So if we are to think about the United States, right, you have the east coast of the United States, that is the shore is the Atlantic Ocean. You have the west coast of the United States where the Pacific Ocean is the shore, right? So he's saying, let these two shores, the shores of the Atlantic and the shores of the Pacific, serve you. Let me do this so that this society does not have strife, and you could be united, and they could be united as a society under your leadership, King Asa, right? So to eliminate strife is the thesis of the argument, is the thesis of the reading. He's doing all of this, all of these wisdom teachings is to establish a society that does not have strife. How is he going to do that? We find that on the next page, page 17. And so begins the formulations of the Meter Nefer, Meter, MDW, Nefer, NFR, and that translates to good speech, right? And so begins the formulations of good speech, to be spoken by the prince, the count, God's beloved, the eldest son of the Pharaoh, the son of his body, mayor of the city, and vizier. Ptahhotep instructs the ignorant in the knowledge and the standards of good speech, Meter. It will profit those who hear. It will be a loss to those who transgress. Ptahhotep begins to speak to Pharaoh's son to prosperity, right? So this is what Ptahhotep wants to do. This is his goal, right? Is to create a society that is able to effectively eliminate strife, to eliminate arguments, to eliminate bickering, to eliminate beef, right? And he lays us with the wisdom teachings that will allow us, if followed correctly, to begin to eliminate this strife. So from there, let's move into our fishbowl. In your fishbowl, you could read your journal. You could talk about what was discussed in your breakout rooms, or you could talk about what was mentioned in my notes. So all that's on the table. Remember, you have you have to do 2 fishbowls per semester, and you have 1 time to pass per semester. Is there anyone who wants to volunteer for the fishbowl?
I'll volunteer.
All right, Connie, thank you for that. Anyone else?
I would like to.
Okay, Gerson, thank you. 1 more? 1 to 2 more. And if not, I'll just call on people.
I'll volunteer.
All right, Zuri, perfect. All right, so we'll go with Carney, Gerson, and Zuri. Whoever wants to start, it's on you.
I could start.
Go ahead.
Give me 1 second. Let me just. Okay. Okay. Can you just help me say his name one more time? I always get it wrong.
Yeah,
The visor's name?
Yeah, Ptahhotep.
Ptahhotep.
Yep.
Okay, so I pretty much got he was a visor. I did extra like research and stuff to kind of figure out what was actually going on. I read the passages a few times. It definitely sounded like it was like almost like the 10 Commandments almost. What I really got from it though was I feel like there's a message of just being humble.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you could be confident but not arrogant. Like it was very moving, honestly, because it was very direct. It wasn't as metaphorical as like the Bible, where there's all these stories and like it's kind of perspective on how you read it and then how you see it. But it was more like direct. It was like this is kind of what you need to do because of these reasons, and that's it. Like, you know. And some passages were repetitive, but I think they were all a little different in their own ways. Um, let's see. Uh, Compared to most religious teachings in today's world, they use and depend on metaphors to provide a message. This seems to be more direct. Um, let's see. Okay, so I really like the 12th passage where it talks about raising a son, and I feel like it showed that the Pharaoh knows these passages from the past, and he kind of wanted to direct this. He kind of wanted to teach his son how to live a better life, because I feel like he's followed these rules, and it showed through like trial and error that these rules actually are real and like based on his life experiences. And I think he just wanted the best for his son, and I think that's one of the 12th passage talks about having the best for your son.
Yeah.
um yeah, and yeah, am I missing something? I think that's
That's good. If you're done, that's okay.
yeah, I think that's other than that, I mean, I really enjoyed it. Great. I could read this. If I could read this every year, I think I would have a different perspective on it. Definitely, as time goes on.
Indeed. Thank you, Tony.
Yeah. Thank you.
Who's next?
I'll go next. So I just wanted to expand on the fact, like on the thesis that you gave to us, which was to establish a society without strife. And I believe that we as human beings could actually achieve this just by being like hearers, to hear those around us and actually think about what they say. um I say this because I have had like past encounters that have dealt with this. Like my father has always given me like advice on how to live life, and he doesn't force me to follow them, you know. So an example would be like, um my father has always told me about or informed me about drugs and certain aspects like that. And he has always told me to, you could probably try like anything you want, right? For example, alcohol, you could try it. But the problem is that when you try it and you like something, you keep doing it. And he has always told me to always control yourself, and to keep it moderate.
Mhm.
So if you like something, okay, you do it maybe once a week or once a month. But the important thing is to always control yourself and always see how it may affect you in the long run. So yeah, so I believe that being a good listener is very important in creating a society without strife, because many people have many things to say and you'll never know what they truly mean if you don't listen. Thank you.
So just real quick before we go to Zuri, I want to point out to you all, when you talk about in your journal, right, you have your thesis and you have your analysis. And what Garrison just demonstrated was his analysis. He says, when I read this, it made me think about some of the things that my father told me, right? Handle things with moderation, right? So this idea of being able to tie outside information to what you're reading grounds you in this concept that I'm asking you to do, which is create an analysis. So how he demonstrated that, if you're paying attention, he's showing you what his analysis was, right? I don't want you all to gloss over the perfect demonstration of an analysis. Zuri's on you.
Okay. I wanted to start with page 16 because I looked at like the very beginning of the second passage. God upon the two crocodiles, and it's reference to Heru, I believe.
Haru.
And I kind of just when I was reading through it for the first time, I looked at it and then I looked at the last sentence of it, of the entire passage, and I just saw, I felt like there was a big um consistency with it, I guess. God upon the two crocodiles, and then the last sentence where it says, "May I do this for you, so that strife may be banned from among our people, and so that the two shores may serve you." I kind of saw the two shores as a resemblance to the two crocodiles. Um, I don't think it's in the I don't think it's in saying that, oh, you are a god yourself, but it's in reference to being able to bring two groups together, like in unity. So I just thought that was really cool. And then I just looked at a lot of the like quotes, and I just saw a lot of wisdom in them, especially the quote, "There goes a living death every day," on page 34. And I just thought that, I think after reading through everything, you kind of learn that these are also ways to keep yourself at peace and not live a life of regret and feeling like you could have done better in some way at some point. And it's always a way of evaluating yourself day in and day out to make sure that you're doing something that you can be proud of when you not only just leave Earth, but something you can be proud of when you're talking to like your children and passing down stories, or like even outside of sharing an entire history, but sharing your own history. And I think that was just a really beautiful quote. I think the overarching theme out like side of strife was that to not dwell on other people's riches and their wealth, because no matter where you are in terms of like your class, you always have richness as long as you are like following these teachings and being good to yourself just as much as you're being good to other people. And that's really what I got out of it.
So, good job. I think it's a really well done by all three of you, Fishbowl. It was very comprehensive, and you gave us great insight into how you understood the reading. What I do want to do though is kind of shift our conversation to and open it up to the whole class. But you know, Garrison poses an interesting comment. He says, "I think this is something that's achievable, right? I think as a society we could do this, but we have to listen, right? We have to really center ourselves as a society around this idea of active listening." So my question to y'all is this: one, do you guys agree or disagree with Garrison? Is this something, a society without strife? Is this something that's achievable? And then if you don't feel that this is achievable, what are the elements or the phenomenon that are preventing this strifeless society from coming into fruition? And again, we're opening this up to the whole class. So, can we achieve a society without strife? Yes or no? And if no, what is preventing us as a society from achieving that?
I think we can achieve it. Um, Actually, I know we can achieve it. We've achieved a lot, I guess, as humans. But it's funny because I just want to say that I was actually watching an interview of one of my favorite hip hop artists last night, and he also talked about.
You gotta
And
tell us
then,
who the artist is, though, bro. You can't just say that and not let us know who the artist is.
oh, MF Doom.
Okay, well, oh, bro,
Okay,
absolutely.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a rare interview I've never seen before, and he actually says um, to shut the f up, and that's like his teachings to whoever wants to do. He's like, do whatever you need to do, but just shut the up. Excuse my French. And he's like, he honestly says, he talks about how you have 2 ears, 2 nostrils, but 1 mouth. And he's like, but the mouth, it's almost like a one way, and you use your nose to breathe in, breathe out, and you use your 2 ears to like listen. It's like more important to have 2 of something than to have 1. So like he was explaining about that, and actually I kind of related that to that passage of listening. And I think we could not deal with strife if we listen more and talk less, technically. You know, sometimes we talk without thinking or talk without listening first. And I feel like that's what, you know, a lot of conflicts come from that, you know, like honestly, if you actually look at also like futuristic shows and TV, like Star Trek, for example, they kind of have like this kind of like a robotic kind of personality, right? They don't really speak out unless, you know, like they've calculated everything properly and then they say what their judgment is or how they should proceed with something. It is almost like a robotic society, but I feel like it's a no strife society at the same time.
Yeah, and I think also like, especially that coming from Doom, right? Who's someone who's so lyrically verbose and
Yeah.
his wordplay is probably is unmatched, and for him to be attentive to the ability to limit your speaking and be more attentive to listening is very profound from someone who is. And if you think about his persona, right? He's very much draws on mystique. Like when he died, no one even knew he died for like a year before it was released. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very, it was very interesting coming from him. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
definitely right, you know.
For those who don't know, MF Doom, Metal Fingers Doom, Metal Face Doom is an underground hip hop artist out of New York. He started with a group with his brother called KMD. Um, his brother transitioned and he kind of went on a solo act. And probably his opus, if you will, is the album called Mad Villain with him and this producer out of the West Coast named Madlib. And to me, I would say it's a classic hip hop album. Like if you are really into like lyrics and dope beats, grab that Mad Villain album, and then I also would suggest you look into Operation Doomsday, which is like one of his really dope solo tracks. And then he has like this whole list of beat albums, and they're called Special Herbs. I think it's Special Herbs 1 through 12, I believe, is the volume.
Yeah,
Yeah.
most definitely. Dude, that's awesome.
So, who else? Who else? Can we create this strifeless society? And if you do not feel we can do so, what is preventing us from doing so?
I really think we could create a strife-free community, but honestly, it's going to be a really difficult task because all it takes is one person
Mm.
to start, you know, conflict, and it requires a lot of patience to not reciprocate that kind of action. So it is possible, but at the same time, it's kind of impossible just because it's like a domino effect. One person is all it takes.
Yeah, this is very true. And then with that being said, right, like how do you not deal with like spirits like revenge, right? And so for me, when I think about that, I think about gangs, right? And we know that gang activity is a pariah in communities, right? And we know that these communities would be better off without gang violence, right? But then, so like on a real practical level, how would you deal with someone who killed your brother, right? Killed your sister, killed your mama, killed your uncle, whatever, and then you have the means to enact that revenge, right? You come from a culture that will support you in the process of enacting that revenge, right? Like, how do you deal with that? How do you break away from doing what your culture says is the right thing to do, which is revenge, or i.e., taking another life, right? So, to all those points, it's like, yeah, we can say that this could be done, and yeah, I believe that it could be done, but then we have to deal with the real human emotions of things like revenge, right? And all it takes is one person to tip this thing the other way, and then now this idea of a peaceful society is gone. So I agree. I'm also noticing that only the men are commenting on, can we achieve this strifeless society? I'm really curious to hear what the women think about our ability to create a society without strife.
So I'll give my opinion. Um, I really don't think that we could create a society without strife. I know it's the complete opposite of what the guys have been saying, but I think the reason for that is because there's so much division in today's society. And part of the reason is because everybody has different morals. So everybody has different religions, which have completely different morals. Like the Islamic religion from the Christianity, there is a little bit of a division, not that much, but there is a crash sometimes. And or like atheists, especially with Christians, like that's the biggest division that there is. And there's always bickering and arguments just with like little opinions that the other group has. So I really don't think that we could create a society without strife unless, yeah, everybody comes to an agreement with their morals.
Okay. So Diane is saying that the divisions and the diversity of morals will perpetuate this society of strife. Someone else tell me what you think. Agree, disagree? What are your thoughts?
I agree with her. Honestly, like there's just so many people who can agree on something, but then there'll always be like another separate group that will say otherwise and have their own opinions, and like I feel like it's just not going to stop. But at the same time, maybe like in the future there might be a possibility. But as for today and today's people, it's just, I don't think it's going to happen.
So is there a possibility of harmonious diversity? Do you guys understand what I mean when I say harmonious diversity? First, let me know what you think harmonious diversity means, and then let's discuss, is that a possibility?
Is it like agreeing to disagree?
Yeah, essentially, right? Like, I don't mind that you're different. That's fine. You could believe in Buddha. I'll believe in Allah, and that's cool, right? I don't mind that you have a specific cultural orientation and mine is separate from that. That's cool, right? But we can still interact with one another from a standpoint of harmony, right? At the beginning of the semester, I mentioned that I'm a Pan-Africanist, right? And I said we are operating within the Pan-African Studies Department. And part of this idea or this notion of Pan-Africanism is focusing on the similarities within the diversity that is African people, right? Even if we were to take like a small section of Africa, we'll go into the west part of Africa, right? And it will focus in on one country within the west part of Africa, and we'll say Nigeria, right? There's vast diversity within Nigeria, right? We have Hausa, we have Igbo, we have Yoruba, right? There's vastly different cultural communities. So Pan-Africanism is going to focus on not those differences, not the fact that Hausa speaks one language, Igbo speaks another language, and Yoruba speaks another language. We're going to just say that y'all all from this area that we call Nigeria, right? So what are the similar customs that these three groups participate in? And we'll focus on those things that are similar, not the things that are different, right? What are the things that happen on the west coast of Africa that are similar that Black folks are doing on the western part of the Americas, right? We're not going to focus on how they're different, but we're going to focus on how they're similar, right? So this is where this idea of harmonious diversity comes into play, because you cannot realistically think about organizing and bringing together and unifying all African people without recognizing that there's going to be some levels of diversity, right? And you cannot be rigid in the way that you interact with those diversities, because what you're going to do is turn some people off. And your ability to create a global Pan-African identity will be diminished because people are going to be caught up on their subtle nuances and their subtle differences, right? So it's this idea of focusing on what's the connections opposed to what separates, right? For me, frameworks like that become important because it allows us to get away from the diversity that becomes divisive. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So I think these are some of the ways that we could begin to move to this strifeless society. I also found it interesting. I would assume, right, that it would be flipped to where the men would be more sold on the fact that we cannot achieve this, and the women would be more optimistic about the possibility of achieving it. So it's kind of an interesting social experiment for me to hear the paradigm shift. Yeah, I don't know why that is, but one would think the nurturer the nurturing ability of women would maybe cause them to have more belief in the possibility of humankind. You know, I don't know, but I find that interesting. Um, I want to read one passage, and I want to talk about it before we're almost done. I just want to read this, and we'll go into this a little bit, and we'll call it a day. I'm looking at passage 11. Okay, it's on page 21 at the very bottom, and then at the top of page 22. It says, "Follow your heart as long as you live. Do no more than is required. Do not shorten the time of follow the heart, since that offends the Ka." And the Ka is like your soul, okay? Just think about the soul when you hear the Ka. "Don't waste time on daily cares over and beyond providing for your household. When wealth finally comes, then follow your heart. Wealth does no good if you are gloom." All right. So, because of sake of time, I'm going to run through this really quick. But think about why you're going to school. Is it to follow your heart? Or is it to achieve financial stability, which would come through a career, come through a job, and things of that nature, right? Because if we are to look at what Ptahhotep is telling us, and we are attentive to the fact that he's trying to create a society that does not have strife, that strife is banned from this society, right? Maybe part of the reason why we're in a society that is such steeped in strife is because no one's following their heart. Instead of following the heart, we're all following the dollar, right? And he tells you, I got you, Garrett, give me 1 second. And he tells you when wealth finally comes, right? So he's not saying that you won't get the money. That's not the issue. It's going to come to you. But when you get it, what does he advise you to do then? Follow your heart. So I think really where we are fucked up as a society, our values is on that bag and not on what Ptahhotep is advising us to do, and that's follow your heart. Garrison?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something to that. So like how you said that certain people, go to school to follow their heart or for wealth. I'm gonna say that I go to school for neither of those reasons.
Okay.
I'm gonna say that I go to school to make my dad proud.
Okay.
Because he lived in a country where they didn't allow him to go to school. And he came to the U.S. Due to a war that had happened in his country. And he always talks about the war and how that really affected him. So I just want him to be proud of me as a person, and to also reflect him through my achievements, since he couldn't do that. You get me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that plays a part on this passage, because I neither follow my heart or go for the money. I just want to make someone proud.
And I don't think that wanting to make someone proud and following your heart are mutually exclusive, right? Maybe your heart is telling you to make your father proud. But what I would advise you, Garrison, start being attentive to what you want, right? Because I understand the importance of making your father proud because of the circumstances of his life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you also have your life, and you also have things that you've been put on this planet to do that may be separate from the desire of your father, right? And I just say that to say that you may be selling the potentiality of your life short by just focusing it on making your pops proud.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue, right, that if you really find what your purpose is and you really live your life to fulfill that purpose, your father will be proud, right? And he may not get it at first, and that's all that it is, and he doesn't get it. It's not that he's not proud of you, he just may not understand it at the time. So I'm not saying to stop trying to make your father proud. Continue to do that, but start being attentive to the things that make your heart proud, that make your heart satisfied, that make your heart full, right? Because I believe that those things that make your heart full, and this is for everyone, right? This is for everyone. The things that make you want to wake up in the morning and do what you have to do, those things are why you were put here, because those are the things that inspire you, right? The things that you think about and give you chills, gravitate to that, because that's why you were placed on this planet, right? So, and oftentimes, again, it may not have nothing to do with anyone else, because your purpose and your destiny is just that, it's yours. And no
Yeah.
one could impede or shift what's for you, if that makes sense. And again, this is not just to Garrison, this is to everyone, right? I implore you to place supreme time on finding out what your purpose is. And you could do that by what Ptahhotep says, follow your heart. Okay, so real quick,